Chapter 12 of Triplanetary. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain and is read by Mark Smith of Simpsonville, South Carolina. Triplanetary by E. E. Smith. Chapter 12. The Specimens Escape. Knowing well that conversation with its fellows is one of the greatest needs of any intelligent being, the Nevians had permitted the terrestrial specimens to retain possession of their ultra-beam communicators. Thus it was that Costigan had been able to keep in touch with his sweetheart and with Bradley. He learned that each had been placed upon exhibition in a different Nevian city, that the three had been separated in response to an insistent popular demand for such a distribution of the peculiar but highly interesting creatures from a distant solar system. They had not been harmed. In fact, each was visited daily by a specialist, who made sure that his charge was being kept in the pink of condition. As soon as he became aware of this condition of things, Costigan became morose. He sat still, drooped, and pined away visibly. He refused to eat, and of the worried specialist he demanded liberty. Then, failing in that as he knew he would fail, he demanded something to do. They pointed out to him, reasonably enough, that in such a civilization as theirs there was nothing he could do. They assured him that they would do anything they could to alleviate his mental suffering, but that since he was a museum piece, he must see himself that he must be kept on display for a short time. Wouldn't he please behave himself and eat, as a reasoning being should? Costigan sulked a little longer, then wavered. Finally, he agreed to compromise. He would eat and exercise if they would fit up a laboratory in his apartment, so that he could continue the studies he had begun upon his own native planet. To this they agreed, and thus it came about that one day the following conversation was held. "Clio, Bradley, I've got something to tell you this time. Haven't said anything before for fear things might not work out, but they did. I went on a hunger strike and made them give me a complete laboratory. As a chemist, I'm a darn good electrician, but luckily, with the seawater they've got here, it's a very simple thing to make."
"Hold on," snapped Bradley. "Somebody may be listening in on us."
"They aren't. They can't without my knowing it, and I'll cut off the second anybody tries to synchronize with my beam. To resume. Making V2 is a very simple process, and I've got everything around here that's hollow clear full of it." "How come they let you?" asked Clio.
"Oh, they don't know what I'm doing. They watched me for a few days, and all I did was make up and bottle the weirdest messes imaginable. Then I finally managed to separate oxygen and nitrogen, after trying hard all of one day, and when they thought they saw that I didn't know anything about either one of them or what to do with them after I had them, they gave me up in disgust as a plain dumb ape, and haven't paid any attention to me since. So I've got me plenty of kilograms of liquid V2, all ready to touch off. I'm getting out of here in about 3 minutes and a half, and I'm coming over after you folks in a new iron-powered space speedster that they don't know I know anything about. They've just given it its final tests, and it's the slickest thing you ever saw."
"But, Conway, dearest, you can't possibly rescue me." Clio's voice broke. "Why, there are thousands of them all around here. If you can get away, go, dear, but don't—"
"I said I was coming after you, and if I can get away I'll be there. A good whiff of this stuff will lay out 1,000 of them just as easily as it will one. Here's the idea. I've made a gas mask for myself, since I'll be in it where it's thick. But you two won't need any. The gas is soluble enough in water so that 3 or 4 thicknesses of wet cloth over your noses will be enough. I'll tell you when to wet down. We're going to break away or go out trying. There aren't enough amphibians between here and Andromeda to keep us humans cooped up like menagerie animals forever. But here comes my specialist with the keys to the city. Time for the overture to start. See you later." The Nevian physician directed his key tube upon the transparent wall of the chamber, and an opening appeared, an opening which vanished as soon as he had stepped through it. Costigan kicked a valve open, and from various innocent tubes there belched forth into the water of the central lagoon and into the air over it a flood of deadly vapor. As the Nevian turned toward the prisoner there was an almost inaudible hiss, and a tiny jet of the frightful, outlawed stuff struck his open gills just behind his huge conical head. He tensed momentarily, twitched convulsively just once, and fell motionless to the floor. And outside, the streams of avidly soluble liquefied gas rushed out into air and into water. It spread, dissolved, and diffused with the extreme mobility which is one of its characteristics, and as it diffused and was borne outward the Nevians, in their massed hundreds, died. Died not knowing what killed them, not knowing even that they died. Costigan, bitterly resentful of the inhuman treatment accorded the three, and fiercely anxious for the success of his plan of escape, held his breath and, grimly alert, watched the amphibians die. When he could see no more motion anywhere he donned his gas mask, strapped upon his back a large canister of the poison (his capacious pockets were already full of smaller containers), and two savagely exultant sentences escaped him. "I'm a poor, ignorant specimen of ape that can be let play with apparatus, am I?" he rasped, as he picked up the key tube of the specialist and opened the door of his prison. "Maybe they'll learn sometime that it ain't always safe to judge by the looks of a flea how far he can jump." He stepped out through the opening into the water, and, burdened as he was, made shift to swim to the nearest ramp. Up it he ran, toward a main corridor, but ahead of him there was wafted a breath of dread V2, and where that breath went also unconsciousness, an unconsciousness which would deepen gradually into permanent oblivion, save for the prompt intervention of one who possessed not only the necessary antidote, but the equally important knowledge of exactly how to use it. Upon the floor of that corridor were strewn Nevians who had dropped in their tracks. Past or over their bodies Costigan strode, pausing only to direct a jet of lethal vapor into whatever branching corridor or open doorway caught his eye. He was going to the intake of the city's ventilation plant, and no unmasked creature dependent for life upon oxygen could bar his path. He reached the intake, tore the canister from his back, and released its full, vast volume of horrid contents into the primary airstream of the entire city. And all through that doomed city Nevians dropped, quietly and without a struggle, unknowing. Busy executives dropped upon their cushioned, flat-topped desks. Hurrying travelers and messengers dropped upon the floors of the corridors, or relaxed in the noxious waters of the ways. Lookouts and observers dropped before their flashing screens. Central operators of communications dropped under the winking lights of their panels. Observers in centrals in the outlying sections of the city wondered briefly at the unwonted universal motionlessness and stagnation. Then the racing taint in water and in air reached them too, and they ceased wondering forever. Then through those quiet halls Costigan stalked to a certain storage room, where with all due precaution he donned his own suit of triplanetary armor. Making an ungainly bundle of the other Solarian equipment stored there, he dragged it along behind him as he clanked back toward his prison, until he neared the dock at which was moored the Nevian space speedster which he was determined to take. Here, he knew, was the first of many critical points. The crew of the vessel was aboard, and, with its independent air supply, unharmed. They had weapons, were undoubtedly alarmed, and were very probably highly suspicious. They too had ultra-beams and might see him, but his very closeness to them would tend to protect him from ultra-beam observation. Therefore he crouched tensely behind a buttress, staring through his spy-ray goggles, waiting for a moment when none of the Nevians would be near the entrance, but grimly resolved to act instantly, should he feel any touch of a spying ultra-beam. "Here's where the pinch comes," he growled to himself. "I know the combination, but if they're suspicious enough and act quick enough, they can seal that door on me before I can get it open, and then rub me out like a blot. But... ah!" The moment had arrived, before the touch of any revealing ray. He trained the key tube, the entrance formed, and through that opening in the instant of its appearance there shot a brittle bulb of glass, whose breaking meant death.